Venezuelan attacks U.S. warship and faces American firepower. September 14, 2025. Off the coast of Puerto Cabello, Venezuela launched 7 P-800 Onyx supersonic missiles at the American cargo ship MV Liberty Star, carrying $120 million in essential goods. This was a direct attack on America's maritime lifeline, an attempt to dominate one of the most important trade routes in the Caribbean. But America was undeterred. The destroyer escort USS Arleigh Burke, with 300 sailors on board, activated its Aegis system and launched SM-6 interceptors, stopping the high-speed attack. The shield held. Now the sword arrived. The United States launched a counterattack. 11 missiles worth $60 million launched from destroyers and 3 FA-18E Super Hornet fighter jets, directed at Venezuela's largest shipyard and coastal defense system. Can Venezuela's defenses withstand the precision fire of a modern American warship? Or will their bold attack spark a devastating counterattack that forever changes the balance of power at sea? Let me find out. 05 a.m., September 14th, 2025. The Caribbean Sea may look calm, but beneath the surface is a powder keg. Just 15 miles from Puerto Cabello, Venezuela's largest port in Carabobo State, lies one of the busiest shipping lanes in the Western Hemisphere. More than 400 tankers and container ships pass through the waters each week, transporting crude oil, food, and manufactured goods. For the United States, the waterway is vital. Nearly $2.3 billion in goods pass through it every 7 days. Even a minor disruption could shake markets from Houston to New York. That morning, the American-flagged cargo ship MV Liberty Star set sail east. With a dead weight of 60,000 tons, its vast hold was loaded with machinery, medicine, and fuel. More than $120 million worth of cargo. On board, the 28 civilian crew members were going about their business as usual. But nothing was routine anymore. Just weeks earlier, Caracas had imposed sudden, harsh tariffs on foreign ships, a move that was seen not as a tax, but as a threat. Behind the announcement was a deeper ambition: Venezuela's determination to assert control over international waters and directly challenge the presence of U.S. vessels. To enforce this declaration, the Venezuelan military began deploying Bastion P coastal missile batteries, each armed with P-800 Onyx supersonic cruise missiles. At 28 feet long and weighing more than 3 tons each missile can travel at Mach 2.6, nearly 2,000 miles per hour, with a warhead weighing up to 660 pounds. A single strike could rip apart the hull of a multi-billion-dollar warship or a tanker loaded with cargo in seconds. The Pentagon's answer was clear. Every American merchant ship would be protected by a warship. For the Liberty Star, that shield was the USS Arleigh Burke, a guided missile destroyer with 300 sailors aboard and an Aegis radar scanning the horizon. Its mission: protect trade routes at all costs. But calm seas can hide storms. Intelligence had hinted at unusual troop movements ashore, and satellite imagery showed Bastion launchers being prepared near Puerto Cabello. No one could say when the storm would pass, but every sailor, every member of the merchant fleet knew the line had been drawn. Would 300 sailors be enough to protect $120 million in U.S. cargo against Venezuela's coastal firepower? 5:22 a.m. The calm that had reigned in the Caribbean all day was broken. Along the coast near Puerto Cabello, under the sodium lights of the port, rows of Bastion P coastal defense trucks stood ready. Troops quickly took up positions. Final checks were carried out like clockwork. Immediately, a flash of light lit up the sky, and 7 P-800 Onyx supersonic missiles fired simultaneously. Each steel arrow was 28 feet long, weighed more than 6,000 pounds, and carried a 660-pound warhead. At Mach 2.6, nearly 1,900 miles per hour, they roared over the waves, hunting for their target: the merchant ship Liberty Star and the American frigate USS Arleigh Burke. On the USS Arleigh Burke's radar screen, 7 red streaks appeared simultaneously, cutting across the dark sea at Mach 2.6. At that speed, the missile would close the 180-mile gap in less than 5 minutes. Inside the Battle Information Center aboard the USS Arleigh Burke, alarms blared. Sailors rushed to their posts. "Multiple incoming missiles confirmed, enemy," the weapons officer shouted. The crew of 320 men and women had trained for this, but training was never like the real thing. Eyes were glued to the screen displaying 7 crimson arrows slashing toward their ship and the defenseless cargo ship next to it. Then the command rang out. "Attack!" The Arleigh Burke's Aegis system roared to life. Hatches opened and SM-6 interceptors soared skyward. Phalanx C9WS guns spun, their barrels glowing red. The sea became a firestorm. Seconds later, explosions scattered across the sky. 5 missiles ripped apart in mid-air, shattering before they could reach their targets. But 2 Onyx penetrated. One malfunctioned, falling into the sea with a deafening bang, sending shockwaves rippling across the water, tossing nearby fishing boats like toys. The other crashed from the sky, then exploded prematurely, scattering debris into the waves. The impact was enough to shake the Liberty Star's steel hull and send millions of dollars of cargo tumbling to the ground. For civilian crews in the area, panic turned to terror. 20 merchant ships in the shipping lane abruptly changed course, their captains shouting SOS signals into the radio network. For them, it felt like the end of the world had come in the Caribbean. The first strike had struck, and America's answer had arrived. If you want more clear, fact-based analysis of modern conflicts, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a beat. 5:54 a.m. The Caribbean was no longer peaceful. Venezuela's failed attack had shaken merchant fleets, but it had also lit a fire in Washington's chain of command. American patience was running out. Orders were being passed sharply over encrypted channels. Retaliate, but keep the shipping lanes open. Intelligence was pouring in. A P-8 Poseidon patrol plane had confirmed the heat signature at Puerto Cabello. The Puerto Cabello shipyard, Venezuela's largest naval shipyard, stretched across nearly 2 million square feet of coastline. It housed dry docks, missile storage facilities, and workshops staffed by more than 850 technicians and workers. Satellites had spotted stacks of missile tubes, each worth $2 to $3 million, lined up in empty yards like rows of fuel tanks waiting to be ignited. The War Council acted quickly, counterattack immediately. But precision was paramount. Civilian shipping lanes remained nearby. Any miscalculation could spark an international crisis. After some calculation, the order was given: a surgical strike. The plan? 3 FA-18E Super Hornets would take off from a carrier group south of Aruba, each armed with 2 AGM-158C LRASM missiles, which have a range of more than 300 nautical miles. From the sea, the Arleigh Burke would launch 5 more Tomahawk cruise missiles, each programmed to strike hardened facilities with precision. The total strike, $60 million worth of firepower, would be delivered in less than 10 minutes. For the 300 sailors on the destroyer, the math was cold but undeniable. Better to burn millions of dollars in weapons than let American civilians die under Venezuelan fire. Do you think America's response will stop at defense, or will the Navy strike back even harder? Stay tuned to see the counterattack unfold. 6:05 p.m. When the order was given, there was no fanfare, just cold mechanical efficiency. 3 FA-18E Super Hornets soared into the inky sky. 6 AGM-158C LRASM missiles burst from their wings and raced toward Puerto Cabello. Out at sea, the USS Arleigh Burke opened its vertical launch tubes and launched 5 Tomahawk cruise missiles downrange. 11 missiles in all, a surgical package worth about $60 million, aimed at a single, carefully chosen target: the Puerto Cabello shipyard. They came with terrifying precision. In just a few minutes, the LRASMS slammed into the missile storage facilities and main assembly hangars. The Tomahawks struck the hardened workshops, the weapons yards, and the power grid that fed the docks. Fireballs consumed roofs, steel beams sagged and snapped, and dry docks that once held warship hulls shook violently. MQ-9 drone cameras captured the devastation. 4 major manufacturing plants were flattened, 7 cranes were damaged beyond repair, and an estimated 70% of the shipyard's operational capacity was wiped out in a single wave. The physical damage was immediate and devastating. Stacks of missile tubes, each worth $2 to $3 million, were reduced to molten scrap. Critical machinery and precision testing benches were gone. Initial assessments put the direct damage to infrastructure at $350 to $450 million, with replacement times measured in years, not months. And then there were the casualties. Despite warnings and notices ahead of the attack on shipping lanes, many workers remained on the scene. Local rosters and satellite imagery later showed that about 850 personnel were on the scene that morning. The attack left about 120 casualties, an initial count of 32 dead and 88 wounded who had been taken to hospital, figures that would become etched into the bitter realities of war. Families in Carabobo woke to the sound of smoke rising from the horizon. Emergency sirens mingled with the roar of rescue helicopters. Militarily, the blow was decisive. The shipyard's ability to repair and rearm coastal missile batteries was destroyed. Within hours, Venezuelan command reported that 2 Bastion P launcher clusters and the main fire control radar that powered them had been disabled. Venezuela's coastal strike capability, at least for the coming months, had been reduced from an operational threat to a strategic liability. On the American side, the cost was measured in hardware and strategic patience rather than blood. No American soldiers died in combat, and the attack was seen by Washington as a calculated response to protect merchant shipping and prevent further attacks. 7 a.m. fires were still raging at Puerto Cabello when the last reports of the battle began to trickle into Washington. Their contents were horrifying. In less than 2 hours, a clash intended to threaten a merchant ship had become a disaster for Venezuela, leaving scars that would last for years. The numbers told the story with devastating clarity. A shipyard, Puerto Cabello Shipworks, was wiped out. Damage was estimated at $350 million to $450 million, crippling Venezuela's ability to repair warships and assemble missiles. 7 Onyx missiles fired, worth nearly $20 million, were wasted. Not a single one hit. 11 U.S. missiles fired in response, Tomahawks and LRASMs, worth about $60 million. Each strike was a pinpoint hit. Human casualties. At least 32 workers killed and 88 injured in the strike. Dozens of families torn apart overnight. Hospitals overflowed along the coast. Sirens blared until dawn. Strategic costs. Venezuela's coastal defense network was cut in half. Bastion launchers and radars were disabled. Venezuela's naval strike force was gone. The shock was widespread. International insurers immediately tripled premiums for any ship passing through Venezuelan waters. Tankers worth hundreds of millions of dollars were diverted hundreds of miles, adding weeks of delays and millions of dollars in fuel. For an already fragile global market, the shock was devastating. Politically, the isolation deepened. 20 countries condemned Caracas for attacking a civilian cargo ship, while Washington showed high-definition footage of the attack, emphasizing restraint and precision. In Caracas, officials faced a grim reality. Their gamble had cost lives, treasure, and prestige for nothing. For the United States, the message was delivered cautiously and coolly. The Liberty Star had sailed safely. The crew of the destroyer did not count the dead, only the cost of the missiles used. In the balance sheet of modern warfare, that gap matters a lot. September 14, 2025. Dawn over the Caribbean. The sky above Puerto Cabello glowed a sickly gray, not from sunrise but from smoke pillars that clawed upward like monuments to a reckless gamble. Hours earlier, Venezuela had unleashed 7 supersonic missiles into one of the world's busiest trade corridors. None found their target. Instead, the retaliation erased a shipyard, crippled defenses, and left families in mourning. The cost was more than money. It was dignity, stability, and trust. The final balance sheet was devastating. Venezuela lost over $400 million in infrastructure, its largest shipyard reduced to rubble, and at least 32 dead with nearly 90 wounded. Its navy, once brandished as a symbol of defiance, was left toothless. By contrast, America counted no casualties. The merchant vessel Liberty Star steamed onward, escorted by discipline and steel. The numbers themselves became the verdict. Recklessness yields ruin. Precision ensures survival. Beyond the battlefield, consequences spread fast. International markets wavered as shipping routes detoured. Insurance rates tripled overnight. For every Venezuelan family near Carabobo, smoke and silence replaced jobs and security. For every global observer, the clash revealed a truth. In modern war, it is not speed or audacity that decides the outcome, but discipline, preparation, and resolve. So what remains is not just wreckage, but a warning. When missiles fall into trade lanes, they do not only strike ships, they strike economies, families, and nations' futures. Venezuela gambled with fire. America answered with precision. And the world was left to measure the cost in billions lost and lives cut short. Now the question is yours. Was this a battle of strength or a lesson in restraint? Comment your answer below, because the next storm at sea may decide more than ships. It may decide history itself.